In 2002, Japan was shocked by a horrific discovery at a Tokyo train station. One of the train cars caught fire due to an electrical malfunction, forcing passengers to evacuate in a hurry. Hours later, when authorities began sorting through the luggage left behind in panic, they found something horrifying in one of the bags: a teenage girl with amputated limbs, wrapped in plastic, with small holes for breathing. Her vocal cords had been removed to prevent her from screaming. Amazingly, there were no signs of violence on her. Her health was not in danger, and her body was mutilated but in good condition. The girl was wrapped in the same plastic used for packaging toys. On the package containing the girl, the number 72 was written with a marker, and in the same bag was a notebook listing her allergies, menstrual calendar, and other health-related information. The police tried to get information from her about the people who did this to her, but their attempts were unsuccessful. She could neither speak nor write and had no other communication skills. 6 years later, the now 20-year-old woman was finally able to share the events of the past. The woman was named Kakumi Totoro. She had been missing since 1999 from school. Her parents believed she was dead. Kakumi said that a stranger told her that her parents had sent him to pick her up, and she got into his car. The man blindfolded her and sprayed something in her face, after which she lost consciousness. She came to in a large, brightly lit white room, locked in a cage with 2 other girls. In the center of the hall was an operating table, behind it a person in surgical attire with an electric saw in hand, preparing to cut off the leg of the girl lying in front of him. One leg had been amputated earlier, and the arm, judging by the bandages, very recently. The most horrifying thing for Kakumi was that along the far wall she saw girls who had already undergone surgery. Although they did not move, they were breathing and blinking. After seeing this, Kakumi lost consciousness. She came to on a bed to which she was tied. To her horror, she could not utter a word. She tried to scream in vain, and she did not feel the fingers on one of her hands. Her left hand was cut off, and the stump was neatly sewn up. She was not alone in the room. The other girls there had 1 to 3 limbs amputated and were all voiceless. Some of them twitched, trying to free themselves from the cuffs and chains holding them, while others just stared upward and cried. All in complete silence. Kakumi says she lost track of time fairly quickly, as they were drugged daily. She was fed 3 times a day, the restraints on her upper body were removed, and she could eat with her remaining hand. At first, she would drop the food on the floor, then pick it up and start eating. Unable to communicate with anyone and seeing no one but the other girls, she began to lose her sanity. She did not know the current time of day, her captors, or their purpose. From time to time, one of the girls would disappear, soon returning with 1 less limb. Although the interval between amputations should have been several weeks, the sense of time was lost. After losing her last limb, her left leg, she was moved to a place she called the exhibition hall. In the new room, she still lay in bed. The hall was round with clean air, platforms along the walls with beds for the girls, each with a label. In the center was an operating table with tools, next to it a cage, at that time empty. For the first time since her captivity, she saw her kidnapper face to face. It was an elderly man with a gray beard. She saw compassion on his face. He looked like a typical grandfather, with no trace of evil in his eyes. He removed the restraints holding her, and she tried to bite him. Apparently, he was prepared for this. He pushed her back onto the bed and attached a metal plate to her back, connected by some mechanism to her skull and pelvis. Kakumi did not know that mounts had been implanted in her skull and back, which, when connected to the plate, deprived her of her last ability to move. The man brought a shield about 1.5 meters long with mounts in 2 thickenings. The man took Kakumi in his arms and, placing her on the shield, secured her plate. The shield with the attached girl was hung on the wall. The elderly man left the room, and the light in the hall was turned off. Kakumi says the first night was a real nightmare. She was surrounded by the sounds of blinking eyelashes, more terrifying than the loudest scream. She stayed awake for several days before she managed to fall asleep. Upon waking, her face was illuminated, but there was no one walking around. The other girls' faces were made up. They were arranged in order of age, from youngest to oldest. She realized they had been collected for quite some time. They all looked like typical Japanese girls with long dark hair and fair skin. The man returned to the hall with a bottle of some liquid. One by one, he approached each of them and poured the contents into their mouths. After that, he made another round, this time giving them water, and another checking the condition of their bodies. On the fourth round, he simply admired his collection, adjusting someone's hair or powdering. From time to time, 3 girls were selected. Their left arms, their last limbs, were cut off and wrapped in plastic. They were hidden in boxes that were taken away. When her turn came, the number 72 was written on her plastic. Through her box, she heard the sound of an engine, then other people. A few hours later, she would be found. Years later, her kidnapper would be caught, who would unexpectedly and inexplicably die. The place with the remaining victims would never be found. Every year, several tens of thousands of people go missing in Japan. 70% of them are underage girls. Thanks for watching this story. What do you think? Please leave a comment and a like under this video.